Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So today we're going to, inshallah, move forward with our sessions on translation, or like the main relevant elements of translation. Now, we're going to start with a simple question. Do you think the general understanding of translation is the same when we handle different types of texts? And by that we mean, if we're going to translate, for example, a medical text, is it different from translating, let's say, literary text, legal text, political text? Or are we going to like have the same strategies, the same steps, the same way of handling these different texts? So it's a yes or no question. Do you think that translating these texts is the same?
No, it's not the same.
Good. So basically, we can't claim that translating all texts from different genres is the same. It's difficult to make such claim. And at the same time, we can't say that they are completely different. What we can say is that there are certain general steps that we can follow, certain tools that we can use, but the actual application of translation, or the actual process, or what happens during translation, depends on the text. Sometimes within the same genre or within the same field, we follow different strategies or different techniques. My favorite answer to the question, is it the same, is it depends. It depends on the text I'm dealing with. It depends on the audience. It depends on the client who's asking for translation. So if we're going to discuss, so how can we learn translation? Why is there translation theory? If you claim that translation is not the same, if you claim that translation is not the same, I'm sorry. So like I was saying, translation in general encompasses certain steps, certain tools that I, as a translator, can use. But building a chair is not like building a table. I may use wood, I may use nails, I may use certain tools, but at the end of the day, if the table is going to be a table and the chair is going to be a chair, then I'm going to need to follow or to have different methods and strategies, or to follow different steps. And that's, in a way, what translation is about. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Now, this diagram is something I designed basically to explain the process of translation. It begins with the text that we're asked to translate. And we say we read the text. Sometimes the text is too long. Do I have to read the entire text? We're going to go through that, inshallah. And there's something about reading about the text. What is reading about the text? What's the difference between reading the text and reading about the text? What's the difference between reading about the text and looking at similar documents? What's the meaning of you have to keep looking for established equivalence, and then you translate, and then you edit and proofread? Now, regarding reading the text itself, why do we do that? SubhanAllah, as Muslims, we have to always keep in mind that our religion is a factor, and we can't ignore that. The word of translation is huge. Clients who require translation come from different countries, from different backgrounds, and have different purposes. A client from the USA, for example, could ask me to translate a brochure for a hotel he has in Dubai. Now, that hotel may serve alcohol. And as part of the brochure that he wants me to translate, there is inclusion of alcohol, or the bar where they sell or serve the alcohol. Now, I need to go through the text that I'm given because I need to make sure that it follows, like it does not violate the basics of Sharia, or goes against the basics of Sharia. And you may think that, do we have to think of that as translators? Yes, you have to think about who's going to read this article, who's going to read this brochure, why are they going to use it, who's going to benefit from it, how is it going to influence the society, how is it going to influence the community. So we need to, at least, if the text is too long, you need to skim it, go through it really quick, and see whether religiously it's acceptable or not. Then the second question is, do I have experience in this field? Have I read anything similar? For example, someone brings me a text that's about mathematics. Do I know mathematics in Arabic? Do I know mathematics in English? Do I have any background about either texts or either languages in this field? Why do we make this, like, why do we ask ourselves that question? Because if the field is entirely new to us and we have no experience, this could affect our reputation as translators. And I always say that the most important thing as translators is our reputation. If a certain factory wants to promote its products, it depends. Yes, it depends on the kind of ads it circulates around the city or online. But the most important way of promotion is the people, is the user, those people who buy the products and tell their family and friends about it or about them. Similarly, as a translator, if you want to have a good career, you need to have a good reputation. And the only way to have a good reputation is if you do good work, and the person you do the work for tells another person or recommends you to another person. So go through the text, skim it, and if you feel that it's so new to the extent that if you actually take the job and translate it, you're going to do a really bad job, then say no. Because you have to think about your reputation every time you take a job. It's very important, okay? Now, let's say I skimmed it and I found it good, makes sense. I have read about a similar topic before, or at least I can, during the translation process, read about it and understand it, then go ahead and do it and accept the job or take the project. If the text is short, yes, you read it or skim it. If the text is long, just skim it. Don't read it like word for word. Is that clear? Is what I said clear? Does it make sense? Yeah, does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what about reading about the text? If it is something you have read about before, for example, you studied education at the university or literature, or you studied, for example, usul al-din, and someone brings you a text or a client brings you a text that's related to your field. So you already know the terminology, the terms that are used in this field or in this genre or in this discipline, which means you will understand most of the text that you're given. In this case, you don't need to go and read about the text. And I'll give you a more detailed example. Let's say I'm not interested in politics and I have no idea what's happening between the Palestinians and the Israeli occupation. No idea. and someone sends me a press release or a text that's related, or an article or research that's related to this issue. Now, because I don't know anything about the topic, I don't know anything about politics, it would be good for me to go and read an article or two to understand, to establish a background in my head about the topic that I'm reading or I'm going to translate. It doesn't have to necessarily be about the same, like the same text that I'm going to translate. It doesn't have to be the same, but it should be relevant, and it should be able to, or enable me to understand the text that I'm translating, to know the key players, to know the main words, the main terms, what they mean, what they indicate, and so on. So that's basically to read about the text. When do I need to read about the text? When the topic that I'm going to translate is new. Now, someone might ask, but didn't you just say that if the topic is new, we shouldn't, go for the project? It's relevant. It depends. Like I said, my favorite answer is always it depends. If the topic is too complex, medical, for example, and you have no idea what medicine is about in Arabic or English, then okay, yes, say no. But if it is something new to you, but at the same time, it's comprehensible, you can understand it. It's something that, if you read about, you would understand. You would be able to translate, you would be able to provide suitable translation, then yes, go for it. But in this case, if it's so new, read about it. Make sure you know some basics about it. For example, you don't know anything about psychology, and you have a text that's related to psychology. Go read a few lines about psychology. I'm not saying go read a book about psychology, but the idea is that you need to build something in your head that you could relate the text to, so that the text wouldn't sound too strange or too incomprehensible to you. Now, then we have something that's called look at similar documents. How do we يا جماعة لو سمحتوا بس المايك انتبهوا. So what does it mean to look at similar documents? Now, as you know, there are different formats for every different type of text. Writing a paragraph is different from writing an essay. Writing a news report is different from writing a financial report. Writing a research paper is different from writing an MA thesis, and so on. Now, when you are asked to translate a news article, it's good that you go and read a news article. If someone asks you to translate a marriage contract, go and read the marriage contract in the target text, language, so that you would familiarize yourself with the format, with how things go, with the style. Do they use, for example, complex structure? Do they use simple structure? Do they usually use compound sentences, simple sentences, compound, complex questions, and so on? So when we say read similar texts, it means you have to go and look for documents or articles or papers that are similar to the topic or the genre that you're translating from and into. Now, keep looking for established equivalents. What do we mean when we say equivalent? Now, if you remember, we said when it comes to translation, you take the meaning, you start thinking of a way to reword the meaning in the target text based on the target language culture, based on the target language structure, based on how the people who use the target language use this particular phrase or sentence in this particular situation. So when we talk about equivalence, we're talking about situations that are replicated in two environments. One environment is the source language, and the second environment is the target language. And your job as a translator is to see how in environment B, or in the second environment, or the environment you're going to translate into, how the people use the language and what part of the language they use to describe a particular situation. Just a second. Okay. Then comes the translation itself. Okay. I just got a cat today, and for some reason هلا خطر على بالها تحبني. فيعني if you hear a meow in the background, ignore it. Okay, so what is translation? Translation, this part is what we're going to learn. It's the process we're going to describe, the process that we're going to explain, what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. مثال على equivalent: out of mind, out of sight, بعيد عن القلب، بعيد عن العين. صحيح. True. Okay. Now, after we're done with the translation, the actual translation of the text, we have to go through what we call editing and proofreading. الآن إحنا إيش اللي حنتعلمه مع بعض? What are we going to do together? We're going to learn the fifth step, or this, like the translation, like how am I going to translate? You will do the reading on your own, the searching on your own, but the actual decisions you make while translating, that's what we're going to discuss, inshallah. What is editing and proofreading? Now, editing and proofreading is what happens after you're done translating, and we're going to explain the difference between the two. But I want you to also know that editing and proofreading alone can be considered a job. Someone can ask you to edit and proofread their work. That's a job. But when it comes to your own translation, editing and proofreading is part of your own process of translation. When you're done, you go through the translated text and you see the, let's say, the slips, the mistakes, the kind of errors that you make, and then you fix them before you submit the work to the client. Now, once you're done, you have to read the text, but not the source text, the target text, the text that you translated. So the first read the text in this cycle is the source text, the text that you're going to translate. The final read the text step is when you read the translated text, the text that you have translated. Now, sometimes it's difficult to look for equivalents because you can't always find them in the dictionary. Texts vary, they're different, they're not the same. So when you're translating a text, you may come across one word that you don't understand, a phrasal verb you don't understand. It could be 2 or 3 words. It could be an idiom. It could be a phrase. It could be a proverb. It could be a joke. It could be a structure, so on and so forth. So when you look for equivalents, you're not going to always find it in a dictionary, and definitely not a paper dictionary. So don't think that you're going to use a paper dictionary. And don't think that it's going to be enough to use a downloaded dictionary, because downloaded dictionaries don't have like all the possibilities or all the terms that that you may use. So what am I going to do? How am I going to look for equivalents? This is what we're going to explain. Someone might ask, why do I look for equivalents? Because we translate for people to understand. So you look for a text. Sorry. So you look for the kind of expression that they use in their context. Okay, now, just a second. Okay, I'm very sorry. Now, why do we look for equivalence? We look for equivalence because you need to use something people understand, the expression that they understand when they read it or when they learn it, and so on. So you can't use a new expression and expect people to understand it. And I'll give you an example. يعني مثلا when brainstorming first appeared and people translated it to العصف الذهني. Now, Arabs had not been familiarized with the word or the expression العصف الذهني. In this case, the newly introduced expression needed to be explained to Arabs so that they would understand what العصف الذهني is. So instead of having to do this every single time you translate a word or a term, and by that I mean not every single time you introduce something new, people are going to go and look for it and try to learn what it means. You look for already established expressions that these people use in these contexts or in these situations, okay? And the piece of advice I can give you is that unless you have looked everywhere, don't stop looking. Make sure that you have looked everywhere before you make the decision that, okay, I'm going to introduce a new expression. Now, the first way, the easiest way, the most direct way is using a dictionary, okay? But what kind of dictionaries can I use? What kind of dictionaries can I use? The first one I would advise you to use is المعاني. المعاني is really interesting because it offers you different possibilities. And I'm going to share my screen instead of sharing this this slide. I'm going to share the website itself. So give me a second so that I would explain. Okay. Can you hear the cat?
Yes, we can.
I'm enjoying the fact that I have a cat, but she keeps pressing enter and she's like disturbing my class. Anyway, so I'm going to share the screen now. Share the screen. Now, as you can see, this dictionary offers you the chance to choose the genre, the field, okay? So for example, if I'm translating a medical text, I look for the word in the medical dictionary. If I'm looking for a word in legal context, I would find it in legal context. It basically minimizes the choices and limits them to one particular field, because sometimes the same word can be found in different fields with different meanings. So this way it limits the possibilities and offers you a more accurate translation. This is one. Two, as you can see, it offers you muradifat wa adad. And I'm going to explain how I use this in my translation. Sometimes the English word has a certain meaning, but you know that it's not the actual meaning you're looking for. We know that words have connotative indications and denotative indications. Denotative indications are the direct meanings of words that we found in the dictionary. Connotative meanings are the words that go beyond the dictionary level or beyond the direct level. It's what people understand when you say a certain word. So how do I use المرادفات or الأضداد? Now, I write the word that I think is similar to the context, and then look for the other synonyms in the same field or in the same or similar to that word. And then I look for the meaning in English for these synonyms. So I look for the synonym in Arabic. The text is in Arabic. I look for the word synonym in Arabic, and then I choose the synonym that suits the meaning, and then I look for the translation or for the meaning in English for the synonym, not the actual word itself. And sometimes I need to use the antonym, al-adad, in order to reach the same conclusion. So I look for the antonym of the word in Arabic, and then I look for the word that I found in English. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? So
Yes,
first,
Yes.
I look for synonyms within the same language, and then I use one of these synonyms to look for in English, or to look for that synonym in English. And that sometimes actually helps, okay? So I advise you to use المعاني. I'm going to end the meeting and send you another link because we have 5 minutes left. So I'm going to end the meeting and send you a new link, okay?